If I don't mention it again in this podcast, one thing I really want to say is during this entire time, whatever piece of the timeline you're on, whether you are just starting to try and you're unsure about what's coming, if you've been trying for a while and you're starting to get a little nervous or fearful, if you've been told you need IVF, if you're not sure, if you're considering freezing your eggs, whatever, wherever you are, how can you nourish yourself during this time? There's so much stress around. Are you doing everything right? Are you taking care of your body right? Are you helping your fertility? And it can feel really stressful, like checking off boxes. How can you also, though, nourish yourself? You need to nourish yourself. Like, what does that feel like to you? So that was a piece of that for me during that kind of healing, grieving time before stepping into the next phase. I really needed that time to take a breath. I'm Jessica Valant. I'm a physical therapist, women's health expert, and Pilates teacher, and my goal is to help all women feel strong, safe, and secure in their bodies. In this podcast, I'll share expert advice, facts, amazing guests, stories, compassion, and hope to help you meet your body in all seasons of life. Hi, welcome back to Meet Your Body. I am so happy to have you here today as we are talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I don't know if I've told my whole story anywhere before. I've definitely told bits and pieces of it. We are talking about IVF today and my journey with IVF. So we will have in the coming week, we will have an expert on. So I'm bringing in an amazing expert, an infertility doctor, to talk to us. So that'll be next week on the podcast. And I'll have other links below to help you on your journey. But today I'm just sitting here with you like we were having a cup of coffee together. And I'm just going to tell you my experience and my story with IVF. And really, I'm just doing it to make sure any of you listening know that you aren't alone. Hoping that experience, just knowing there are other people who have been through it as well, I'm just hoping that helps. I'm not giving you advice whatsoever in this episode today. Every person's story and journey with infertility is so different. So I definitely want to say that. We're all so different. I want you to defer to your healthcare professional, whoever you're seeing, whoever you're working with on that. So I'm not here to give advice. I am here just to sit with you in this space and to tell you my story, my own experience with IVF and infertility. So if you followed me for a while, if you have consumed any of my content, you do know that I was diagnosed with endometriosis, and that was 22 years ago. So I was in my early 20s. I was 25 years old. And if you want to know more about that, you can definitely find all of my resources around endometriosis. I've talked about that story quite a bit. So I remember waking up from surgery and being told, this is something you're going to have forever. It can't be cured, and you may have a hard time having kids. And I'd always wanted babies. Always. It wasn't even a question to me of if, it was just a question of when. I wanted to be a mom. And so I really hung on to that and made it my goal to be as healthy as I possibly could, to be able to have children. And so I went through a lot with that, a lot with the endometriosis, managing all of those things. And as you know, any woman could tell you who has decided they want to have kids or they want to start trying, it's just such a trip in that you spend a very good portion of your life trying not to get pregnant. And then when you are ready and you want to be pregnant, you want to be pregnant right that moment. There isn't a lot of in between, which means also you just don't really know how your body will respond. I mean, really, you don't know if you'll be able to get pregnant or not until you start trying. So I knew my health history, right? Like a lot of you probably have a health history or know you might have a health history that might make it a little harder to be pregnant. I had that, but really, I didn't actually know how that was going to be put into place until we started to try. And so I was 34 years old when we first started trying. Is that right? 34. I was 34 years old when we first started trying to get pregnant, my husband and I, when we decided we were ready. And so we did. And 5 months later, I was pregnant. And so I was able to get pregnant naturally after 5 months of trying. The doctors said it was a literal miracle because of my body. And I really just figured maybe my endometriosis wasn't that bad. That's kind of what I thought, was maybe it's not as bad as everyone thought. And so we were able to get pregnant, had our amazing, wonderful daughter when I was 35 years old, and just figured I wasn't going to be that person that had a hard time getting pregnant. I, again, was just going to be one of those really, really lucky people. And so a year after we had our daughter, we started trying again. And we tried, and we tried, and we tried for about somewhere between 8 months and a year. And in that time, yes, my anxiety was going up. I mean, I was older, and I didn't know. I just assumed we'd be able to get pregnant, to be honest. I just assumed it would be fine. It was the first time around. I 100% just assumed it would be fine the second time around. And so after, like I said, 8 to 12 months, somewhere in there, I decided to see a reproductive endocrinologist. So we had moved during that time. So because of my endometriosis, and I actually have something called a prolactinoma. It's a small benign tumor on my pituitary gland. Because of those things, I had a reproductive endocrinologist prior to being pregnant in the past. We had moved, so I decided, you know what, I'm going to see an endocrinologist again. Let's just get all my levels checked. Like maybe it's this prolactinoma that's causing me not to ovulate. Who knows what's going on? Let's just have everything checked. So we started that process and went through all the tests, right? Had all of my levels checked, hormone levels. We started with that. Yes, we did sperm count, did all that, everything fine. Everything really came back with no clear answer. The doctor said, I really don't think it's your endometriosis. You had no problem before, but let's do the test. And I'm sorry, like I said, I'm sitting here with you having coffee, telling my story. I didn't write down all my notes for this. So we had the test that checks the flow of your fallopian tubes that I don't remember the name of right now, that I know many of you could tell me the name. It starts with an S. I could look it up. So I had that done. And that, again, assuming, okay, if we have a blockage, we're going to be able to see this. And that's what endometriosis can cause, is it can cause many things, but it can definitely cause a blockage in the fallopian tube so that the egg can't travel from the ovary to the uterus, which can then cause a problem getting pregnant. So we had that test done. Fine. The results were totally fine. No blockage shown in my fallopian tubes. And at that point, obviously, we had kept trying. For me personally, during that time, I was having more and more pain, a lot of cramping, a lot of pain that reminded me of my endometriosis pain. I mean, I was having pain, or cramping 23 days out of every single month. And I was also doing everything possible to make myself as healthy as possible and to become pregnant. And again, if you're listening to this and you've been through or you're going through infertility, I know that you get it. I mean, every single possible food. I was eliminating foods that might be a problem. I was adding all the foods. I was doing the pineapple core, eating all the Brazilian nuts, everything that could possibly help fertility. I was doing. I was seeing a reproductive acupuncturist. I was getting massage done. I was trying to work on my nervous system. Literally everything that you could do, I was working on that. And I had regular periods also. I'm just throwing it out there because, again, any of you going through it, I know it's helpful to have all the information. So I had always had what I would consider regular periods. Yes, I had severe endometriosis, but my periods, my cycles at least, were fairly regular cycles. So that's where I was with all of that. And so with that, I was definitely having, I don't want to say stress. That's too light of a word for it. When your body isn't doing something that you really, 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 really want it to do, and you feel like it should be able to do that, and it feels like everyone around you can do it without a problem, it can cause some really deep pain. It's a hard time. For me, infertility was absolutely one of the hardest times in my life. And I've gone through a lot with all of my surgeries and a breast cancer diagnosis and so many things around that, around health. Infertility ranks right up there in the top 3 hardest things that I have been through. It was a really, really hard time, wondering what I was doing wrong, what else I could be trying, what I should be doing right. Everyone's saying to stress less. It'll happen if you just don't stress. But everything was just causing me more stress. And really, again, going back to the fact that I was able to get pregnant the first time, which makes me very lucky. I'm going to absolutely acknowledge that. We were so lucky. So, so, so blessed, so lucky, so grateful to have our daughter. It just also caused some things in my brain. Okay, what did I do wrong this time? What have I done wrong? What did I break? What happened? They call it secondary infertility, when you're able to get pregnant the first time and not the second time. The label is secondary infertility. So we went through all of that. And like I said, all of the tests and everything for a couple of years, probably about 2 years, until finally the reproductive endocrinologist and I, and, talking to my husband, decided that I should have another surgery. So I had had my first surgery for endometriosis back when I was 25. I was now at this point probably 38, and said, I haven't had a surgery since then. We should just go in and explore. He said, if you really are committed to getting pregnant, and I was definitely committed to getting pregnant, he and I agreed we should probably go in and see what's going on. And so I had a second surgery and woke up, went home, and I had to wait about 2 weeks before I could see the doctor for the results. Went back, and I remember sitting there. I was by myself because my husband had to be at home with our daughter. She was 3 at that point. And so I remember sitting there, and he came in, and he looked at me, and he said, I cannot believe how you appear on the outside knowing now what I found inside of you. He said, you have stage 4 endometriosis, you have frozen pelvis, you have scar tissue wrapped around blocking your fallopian tubes. So yes, they were blocked. How the test came back normal, he didn't know. He said that an egg is not going to get through there. My intestines were stuck to my abdominal wall. All of that to say, my endometriosis had gotten much worse, had continued to develop, continued to get worse over the past few years. And he said, IVF is your option if you want to get pregnant. That's the next route you need to pursue. And I left devastated. And there were some other things. They found a growth on my liver I had to do a follow-up with, and there were some other things going on. So it was a lot to take in at once. But just that idea of, I did so much. I worked so hard to be healthy, to be able to do this. I did what everyone said I needed to do. I did it. I checked the boxes. And yet here I am. And I didn't know how I felt about IVF, to be honest. So it's like kind of grieving the fact that my body was in the state it was in. What does that mean for my future? Like, what does it mean for my health? Grieving the fact that we weren't going to be able to have a baby naturally again. And also then knowing I need to face head first my feelings about IVF. Like, how do I feel about it? Is this something we want? And so we took 6 to 8 weeks. I had to recover from surgery. I mean, that was a really hard surgery to recover from. So I had to recover from that surgery, had to wrap my head around all of it. And then ultimately knowing, I don't know how you decide to have IVF. I mean, we're all very, very different. And I do think some people can decide very quickly and very easily. For me, it wasn't a matter of how much I wanted another baby. I mean, that was a 100 out of 10 scale. Like I wanted to grow our family. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind about how I felt about having another baby. It was really just kind of accepting and acknowledging the path we were now going to have to take to do that. It was just such a 180 from what I had assumed and what I had expected and what I had known. And for me, it was literally waking up from surgery, going to that doctor and hearing, oh no, this is your only other option. That's it. And as you know, there's financial implications. I mean, I feel extremely lucky, extremely privileged that we were able to go through with it, because many people aren't. There's a big financial blockage, quite as well as just the decision-making process. There's so many pieces to it. And so for some people, it might be really easy. So you might be listening to this saying, oh, it was an easy decision for me. Absolutely, I acknowledge that. And I am just saying, for me, it was not. And not in that I didn't want to do it, because I really would have done anything to be able to have our baby. It was just mourning what couldn't be, and grieving that. And then also making the right decision for our family, how we were going to move forward in the next phase. And so once we got through that, we had a meeting with an IVF, an infertility doctor, about what our options would be. Because I was older at that point. Again, 38, 39 at this point. So we went through that process. And if you are wondering how it works, I want to give you a step-by-step. I also, again, am just kind of sharing my story, but I do want you to kind of have some tools. So I will break here to say, and more next week when we have our expert, our infertility doctor on, we talk about this, about kind of what steps to take and at what age to do it, having your hormones checked, all of that. So she gives some really good information about that. So make sure you check next week's episode of Meet Your Body for that. I will say, from my standpoint, I truly believe knowledge is power. I think that for everyone, but I really believe that for myself. It's how I kind of work. And so I just said, you know what? Let's just meet with someone and get some information. Like, I don't know what's going to come next, but let's find an office we like. Let's find a doctor we relate to. Let's find out the cost. I didn't know anything. I'm like, what's the cost? What is the timeline? What do we even start with? How does this work? I mean, even being a physical therapist for a long time and working with women who'd been through IVF, I didn't know a thing because I didn't have to do it myself. So I didn't bother to learn much about it. And so for me, that was the first step. So I would recommend that if you just want to gather information. Most of the times your consults are free. You can start with that. You can start gaining information, seeing if it might be right for you, seeing what the next step is. And a lot of times they might say, oh, you don't even need us yet. Go do this and try a few things and come back to see us in 6 months. It'll help you get kind of a timeline. And again, at least be able to put one step in front of the other to gather some data to make the best decision for yourself. And so that's what we did first. After kind of, again, healing from my surgery, wrapping my head around a few things, we took a couple months. We took a trip. Hawaii is our happy place. We lived there for a very long time. So I remember after my surgery, it was probably 8 weeks after my surgery, and I was still not feeling, great. I was fairly tired. And again, I was just mourning and kind of in grief a little bit about it all. And I remember we went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and that was a really good opportunity for me to just sit. Like we just played with our daughter. I just played with her. I let my body heal. I just got in the salt water. So that is one thing I want to say. If I don't mention it again in this podcast, one thing I really want to say is during this entire time, whatever piece of the timeline you're on, whether you are just starting to try and you're unsure about what's coming, if you've been trying for a while and you're starting to get a little nervous or fearful, if you've been told you need IVF, if you're not sure, if you're considering freezing your eggs, whatever, wherever you are, how can you nourish yourself during this time? There's so much stress around. Are you doing everything right? Are you taking care of your body right? Are you helping your fertility? And it can feel really stressful, like checking off boxes. How can you also, though, nourish yourself? You need to nourish yourself. Like, what does that feel like to you? So that was a piece of that for me during that kind of healing, grieving time before stepping into the next phase. I really needed that time to take a breath. Like I needed to wait 6-8 weeks to just sit in that, to kind of sit in that messy middle of, oh my gosh, okay, it's not going to look this way that I thought it was. My body, I need to address my body. I need to take care of myself as I heal. And what's this next phase with endo for me? And then can we feel really good about stepping into this next phase? Am I ready for that? So take that time. Take the time you need. I know it feels like you're on a really fast timeline and you want to get things done fast. Just take a moment. You don't have to take a long moment, but just take a moment, take a few breaths, nourish yourself in whatever way that looks like to you. So that's what we did. And then we started the, data gathering kind of process, met with some doctors, and then really just sat down, my husband and I, and said, okay, is this what we want to do? Like, is this the right decision for us? Yes. Filled out the paperwork. And then we started the IVF process, which again are a lot of steps. Each doctor is going to be a little bit different. So find a doctor you like, find a doctor you really trust. I think it's great to get recommendations from friends or people you know. I will say for me personally, one thing that happened that I didn't expect was we chose a doctor that was 5 minutes from our house. It just worked out that way. And I loved our doctor. And I was shocked by the number of appointments that I had. Like, you will have so many appointments. There will be times that you have a lot of time between appointments, but then when you need to be there, it can be like every day for a couple of weeks. So that was really convenient to me, was actually having it close because I was there so much. And that isn't always possible. It's just one thing to think about, one of a million things to think about. Do they have payment plans? Do they possibly take insurance? What does your insurance look like? Again, is it someone you trust? Do you feel just comfortable in your gut when you go in that office? Those kind of things. Can they work around your schedule? Do they have morning appointments or evening appointments? Ask all of those things. Take your time to pick someone that you feel like is going to be an advocate for you. And so we picked the office. We started the process. Went through all of it. One other recommendation I can say, like I said, I don't necessarily have a lot when it comes to how to help, really specific steps to take. I did see a reproductive acupuncturist during this time, during the entire IVF process. She actually worked with my IVF doctor. I loved her. She was a lifesaver during this process to help me. She was like a big, important part of my team, helping me interpret things and make decisions. It also helped my stress. And I highly, highly believe it actually helped me personally to get pregnant. It helped with that process. So that was one thing that helped me quite a bit. And she actually came into the office during the embryo transfer because she worked with my doctor really closely. So that's just one of the many things that you can look into. Again, that was helpful for me. So we went through IVF procedure. We went through all the injections, went through the stimming, and went through the first egg retrieval. And then after you have the egg retrieval, you will find out if viable embryos were formed after the egg retrieval. Our first IVF procedure was a failure. We had no embryos. And that was very, very hard because we had been through the whole thing. Again, the injections, I'd been through all of it. And then nothing to show for it. We had no embryos that survived that. And that was very hard. And we had to decide if we wanted to go through it again. And at that point, we knew we were moving back to Denver. We were in California at the time, so we knew we were moving back to Denver within 6 months. And so we met with the doctor, and she said, with your levels, because with my age and with my endometriosis, I didn't have the most robust ovaries. I mean, they did not get many eggs when they did the egg retrieval. Some women have, 50 eggs. I think I might have had 10. I mean, we didn't have a lot. And she said, no, after going through one process, I think you have a 10% chance of another IVF cycle working. You might want to consider an egg donor. There are other things you can consider. Take some time and come back to me. And I was devastated. I was completely devastated and didn't know what to do. We did have a family. We had our daughter. Where were we financially? Because we had to pay for an entire other round out of pocket. So all that to say, after, 2 to 4 weeks of because your body has to heal from that too. I mean, that was a lot of hormones injected, a lot of things happening in my body. So I had to let my body calm down. Once the doctor was ready to start another cycle, we decided we would try one more. We still had some medication left over that I could use again. So that was some of my thought process, was we were saving a little money. We still had some medication I could use again. We were moving to Denver. Let's try one more time. And then once we moved back here, we thought maybe we'll just be done. Like maybe that's it. And so we went through it again. And I remember the doctor changed the medication just slightly to see if maybe we could help ramp up my ovaries. And we did the egg retrieval, and we ended up with 3 embryos after this second cycle. 3 embryos. Now, with IVF, there's, again, a lot of things that can happen. Typically, they're going to have your embryos and they will freeze them so that they can do genetic testing and find the healthiest embryo to then implant for you. Many times you can even choose if it's a girl or a boy, and then you would freeze your extra embryos to use at a later date. All of those things you hear about IVF do happen. But our doctor said, your last cycle, we did have, I think, 2 embryos the first cycle, but they didn't survive. They didn't survive the 3 to 5 day wait that happens. She said, your body has been pregnant before. You've been pregnant before. I know you can carry a baby. She said, I don't know if your embryos are going to survive long enough for the freezing process and the genetic testing. So instead of a frozen transfer, she said, I would like to do a fresh transfer, which doesn't happen much anymore. I now know, it doesn't happen much at all, because people like the frozen transfers because, again, you can make sure that you're getting the most viable embryo when you transfer. But we had 3, and she said, we can do a fresh transfer where we transfer almost right away. Again, it's 3 to 5 days later. We will transfer, and we will see if your body can help these embryos and help them to survive for a viable pregnancy. She said, we can transfer all 3. And we said, okay. Keeping in mind, as she had said before, we had a 10% chance of any of this even working. So they implanted 3 embryos of fresh transfer. So I didn't know girl, boy, genetics. I knew nothing about these embryos. I just wanted our babies. And so they implanted 3. And that's when the 2-week wait happens, which, yes, is very hard. I have no tips for the 2-week wait, except, again, nourish yourself and keep yourself busy. Follow the doctor's orders around, movement and all of that. Stay in close contact with your doctor if you need to. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask them. Don't overread your symptoms. Oh my gosh, I know it's so hard during that 2-week wait. You just, every little every little thing you're wondering what you feel. I went on long walks in the sun. I had made a really special playlist of certain songs. That was my IVF playlist that I would play. I played it like during the embryo transfer. So I would go on long walks in the sun and listen to that playlist. That's what I did. And the only way through it is through it. And that's what I can say. Watch things that make you laugh. Watch things that keep your mind off of it. Nourish yourself during the 2-week wait. That's really the only way. The only way to do it is to do it. And then I got the call. We got the call. And I remember exactly where I was. I was upstairs in the house and the doctor called. And because you go in for blood work, that's how they're reading it, is from blood work. So they check your blood work at the 2-week point. And she said, your numbers indicate you are pregnant. And your numbers indicate you are most likely pregnant with twins. And so I was. And so we were pregnant with twins. 2 of the embryos had implanted. So after that, you continue to see the IVF doctor for follow-up appointments until I feel like right about the end of the first trimester. And that's when it's around like 3 to 4 months. And that's when they are done following up with you and you move on to your regular OBGYN. Because you do continue with some progesterone with the IVF doctor through that first trimester. And so I went in for my first ultrasound. We had 2 heartbeats and we were pregnant. I was pregnant with twins. My body had taken those 2 embryos and we had lost one. One didn't implant. And then I just started buying all the books. I'm like, twins? How do we do twins? I need to know what to do with twins. And then around week 8 or 9, I went in and the ultrasound showed 1 heartbeat. And so we had lost one of the twins. It's called vanishing twin syndrome. And that was really hard. And also so thankful that I was still pregnant with 1 healthy embryo. And then I went on to have a healthy pregnancy and give birth to a healthy baby boy. And that was our 10%. And so we had no embryos. Like that was it. He was it. He was our chance. And he is here. And so we, many people can talk to you about follow-ups. Like if you do have embryos after, and do you freeze them and what happens with that? Or maybe this is your first pregnancy, so you use them again for a second pregnancy. That wasn't us. This was it. This was it for us. That was my last pregnancy, no embryos. And so our family was complete. We were done. My body had no more. My body had no more to give. My sweet body had done the very best it could. And then 2 years after our son was born, I had to have a hysterectomy and prolapse repair. And so went through another grieving process along with another season of so much gratitude for what this body has done for me. And so that is our IVF journey and our IVF story. I know everyone's is different. Like I said, everyone's is so different. And that is mine. And I know I probably had a lot of ums and ahs and hesitated during this podcast. It's just hard. It's a really hard time for me to put into words because it was so life-changing, obviously, and so hard, and something I'm also so thankful for. I'm so grateful that we have access to this kind of medical technology. I mean, that's really what it is. I'm so grateful that we live in this time where we have access to this. I'm so grateful for the privilege of being able to have access to it because I know not everyone does, and I think people should. That's something I want to fight for. I believe everyone should have access to infertility treatments. I also believe everyone needs to make the decision that's right for them. I remember after our first cycle that did not work and how devastated I was and how hard, again, I'm like, I never imagined, you don't hear about a cycle not working. I thought it just worked. I really did. I thought just if you were willing to go through it, I thought that was the hard thing, was the decision to go through it. And then I thought after that, it just worked. Like science just made it work. And honestly, it doesn't. It doesn't always. I know that now personally, but I really know the stories too. I know women who've been through it multiple times. Like I know that. But I was in a place of not understanding that and feeling like, gosh, I have to decide if we're going to do this again or if we can do this again. And I remember a friend saying, well, how bad do you want another baby? And I said, I'm like, what? She said, how bad? Like on a scale of 0 to 10. And I said, well, that's not even, I said 100. I mean, it's not even a question. That's what I want. Like the deepest feeling in my bones. I want another baby. I would do anything for it. She said, oh, then you need to do it again. She said, I thought you might say like 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10. And I think that hit me that we are all different. And it is okay if your answer is 6 out of 10. Like that's okay if you don't know, if you want to go through it. And it's okay if it's not right for you. There are so many paths forward with kids, without kids, adoption, surrogacy, egg donor, sperm donor. There are so many options. And there might be options that you just don't want to have to choose. And I get that. Like I wanted to be able to have a baby naturally. And I couldn't that time around. And there's so many women that's the case. You wish you didn't even have to make that choice, but just know there are then choices in front of you. This was ours. This is what I made that was right for me. And you have to do whatever is right for you. And just know that you are in control of those choices. Like I want you to have knowledge. I want you to sit again with it. That's one thing I just can't recommend enough, that you take a little bit of time to take that breath and decide, what do you really want? I want you to also know, however you make your family, kids, no kids, friends as family, extended family, adoption, all the things we just said, however you make a family, that is beautiful and sacred. That is worthy and valuable and amazing and so important. It's how you do it. It's how you create your family and how you find a way to feel like a partner with your body. And this is how it worked out for us. And I will always be grateful for this journey. Do I wish I maybe wouldn't have had to go through it? Yeah, sure, I do. Am I so grateful every second of every day that I went through it and that we decided to go through another cycle and that we had a doctor who was willing to do some alternate options to make it happen for us? Yes, every second. Every second. I am grateful for that. And I always will be. And so that's my story. A couple things that people ask quite a bit. I want to hit frequently asked questions. Again, being a physical therapist, I get asked a lot about exercise during IVF. Gosh, this is a tough one because there is such varying information out there and there's not a lot of really clear information about what you should or shouldn't do. Ask your doctor. Like this is a time you are not going to be through it forever. Okay. It is a short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. Your doctor has specific ways they may like to do things. Follow their advice. In general, what I can tell you, especially if you aren't quite seeing a doctor yet, do whatever nourishes your body. Again, right? You want to be healthy, yes. So you need to be exercising. And if you're not even trying to get pregnant yet, just make sure that you are exercising regularly, doing what you like, doing what makes you happy, and that your cycles are regular. If your cycles are regular and you're generally healthy, you can probably exercise in whatever way that you want before trying to get pregnant. If you are then going through IVF, you just want to make sure, again, follow your doctor's advice. In general, I'm saying this is a very general statement. In general, during the beginning of the IVF process, you can continue to exercise. A lot of times they just don't want you to do really stressful, like HIIT workouts necessarily. But I continue to do most of my regular exercise through the very beginning of IVF. Once you get to the stimming part, and you'll know what that is once you're in it. Once you're in the stimming part, that changes. You want to make sure you're avoiding twists. You're just really gentle movement, very gentle, if any movement, the doctor will tell you. And then during the 2-week wait, that is up to the doctors. While many doctors say bed rest for 2 days, research around that is kind of changing a little bit, but I continue to say follow your doctor's advice. Again, it's a very short amount of time. During those times, I just went on very long walks to nourish my body. When I was once I started the injections for IVF and through the 2-week wait, I did lots of long walks. But before that point, I was doing my regular workouts. So that's one thing that people ask me about quite a bit. A lot of people ask as well, how do you deal with the symptoms? And same thing I just said, just nourishing your body, knowing it's short-term. It is not forever. It's a short-term process. I had the end goal in mind. I'm like, I will do whatever I need to do to really try to support myself during this IVF process. Long walks. I know I keep saying that, but I did a lot of long walks in the sun, music that made me happy, books that made me happy, snuggling my daughter, food to nourish my body. I saw the acupuncturist, that reproductive acupuncturist helped quite a bit. So there are a lot of things like that. But again, nourish your body. Try not to worry too much about the short-term process of it. I didn't have much pain. I know people talk about weight gain. I didn't have a lot of that either. I mean, no more than like a typical bad period, I would say, to be honest. So just to lay that out there, I try to dispel people's fears around that. Like, don't let that hold you back. Make the decision that's right for you, but all the symptoms you can work around and work through. Right? Like I said, it's short term. It's really more about what is best for you and your body and your family and yourself long term. That's how you should probably make your decision-making process. I hope that you were able to kind of follow along with my ramblings today about this subject. It is, like I said, near and dear to my heart, and it's just hard, not easy for me to string coherent thoughts around it because it is so much of a feeling. But I hope that helped. I hope it just helped understand and hear someone else's story and to know that you aren't alone. Wherever you are in the journey, you aren't alone. So I will have other resources below in the show notes. And thanks so much for stopping by today. I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening today. I would love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It means a lot to us and it helps our content get out to more women who need it. You can find more of my resources at my website, jessicavalant.com, or find me on YouTube at Jessica Valant and Instagram at Jessica S. Valant.